Hello everyone, my name is Nick, this is Deep Dives, and welcome to another episode of Wax Lyrical, a series where I get wax lyrical with a guest about games we love. For this episode, we are going to be talking about the colossal beast that is Dead by Daylight, and joining me today is my special guest and Dead by Daylight legend, Otzdarva. Hey Otz, how you doing?
I'm doing very good, happy to be here, Nick, and that is a big adjective, thank you.
I only speak the truth on this show. Naturally, very excited to have you on to talk about DBD. For those not in the know, I'd probably go as far as to say that Otz is the biggest voice when it comes to Dead by Daylight, so of course having him on to talk about it is a no-brainer. I believe you've been making various forms of content now for around about 12 years, if I'm guessing correctly, would you say? Give or take? I did go back and look at your YouTube channel.
Probably 10 years is an accurate statement at least. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, and even though you probably started playing DBD before then, you only really transitioned to doing full-time DBD content around maybe, 4 years ago, give or take?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Okay.
It's been the main source of my attention and love and video making and stream energy, that's for sure.
Okay. So, my first question is, what made you make the switch?
Well, even 4 years ago, I would still say I was very much in my infancy of content creation. And I have to say I was very fortunate and very lucky. Back in the day, before even I made any money or considered this a full-time job, I played the games that I found fun. The first games that I played were mostly Dark Souls and its sequels, and I found a small audience there that was awesome. And one day, I started playing a different game that was not quite the same. And obviously, when you do that, you're going to find that your audience is suddenly almost back to zero. You start thinking, well, I'm not getting a lot of views on this, or maybe it's not performing the same as my other content. But you know what? I really like this game. And I'm going to keep playing it because it's fun. And it turns out that other game I started playing was PUBG, which around 2017 became really, really popular. And I found a huge audience there. And for some time, I thought it was the most fun thing ever, and I dedicated myself to that. And at some point around 4 years ago, as you mentioned, I started playing Dead by Daylight on a complete whim, based on a bunch of coincidences. And then I really liked it, and I made a video, and again, I got no views. It was obviously starting over again. But I just realized I really enjoyed the game. And there's one thing this game has, and I know we're not talking about any other game yet, but one thing that's really remarkable about Dead by Daylight, and it's the fact that it is a huge, bottomless pit of investment. You can invest so many hours into learning how to play it and still not be close to the best. You can invest so much time in unlocking things and still not have everything. It is a game that's it really feels like every hour you put into it, leads towards something. And no two players will go the same path. So as I played it more and more, I realized, this is really fun. And at one point, I think I started to realize that a lot of people in the community were asking questions or trying to learn the game. And I saw that there weren't a lot of guides and resources for them. So since no one else was doing it, I started to do it myself. And I found myself in a position where a lot of newer players that were learning the game found my resources and found my community through them. And this became a bit of a running tradition for me to keep making and updating these resources, and it's one of the most satisfying things I've ever done in my content creation career. So that's how I started doing this full time, I'd say.
And when I was first getting into Dead by Daylight, your channel was naturally one of the first I came across, and it felt like a Bible of sorts.
Oh, well, to be completely fair, back in the day, obviously, the game was quite a bit smaller, and there were not a lot of content creations actively making resources for it. I was also very lucky in that through a series of coincidences from my upbringing to my interest, I guess I had some knowledge of how to put things together, how to make certain graphics, infographics, and guides, and I also learned a lot through trial and error. So I put those resources out there, and back then there was not a lot of competition. There were not a lot of people doing it, so a lot of people found it because there was no one else making it. And nowadays I'm in a different position where there is so much competition, and anyone trying to make videos like this would be in a really tough spot. If you told me that you're a new content creator and you're gonna invest 10 hours in researching or recording a video that's maybe 5 hours long, I would tell you that's really difficult. For most people, it's going to be a huge investment of time for very little returns. It's not going to please the algorithm, so to speak, too much. It's going to be very difficult to make that kind of content and make a return on it. But I am maybe in an extremely privileged position where I can spend 12 hours recording a video and that video will get 1 million views over time, which will more than pay for itself, pay for the investment, and obviously is extremely satisfying to feel like you're helping a lot of people learn the game and enjoy it a little bit more. So, and this obviously only becomes more and more necessary as the game grows larger and there's more and more to learn, because this game, again, has, not only is it a bottomless pit, it is a bottomless pit that keeps getting deeper somehow.
Yeah, it is a beast. I am a relatively new player in terms of I started playing back in August 2021.
Okay.
I've only, at that point, I'd only ever heard of Dead by Daylight through third parties and people sort of saying. I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was an isometric. Maybe that's the wrong word I'm looking for. I thought it was like a 2D side-scrolling.
Yeah, because isometric and asymmetrical sounds really similar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get your confusion, actually. How was it learning the game and getting your first impressions?
Well, it was free on. I remember it was free on PlayStation Plus, and I was going through a particularly tough time around then. And I was sat there one night. I didn't know what to play. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. I saw that Pyramid Head. I'm a big Silent Hill fan. Obviously, viewers of the channel will know the origins of this channel with the Silent Hill. But I saw Pyramid Head, and I was like, okay. I mean, the DLC was on sale for like, I don't know, £2, £3 or something like that. So I thought, okay, let's give this a go. It's just a naughty lunch. If I don't get on with it, you know, I'll eat a sandwich tomorrow instead. I played my first game with him. I had no idea what I was doing, and all of a sudden, I got a 4K on my first.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Maybe it was bot lobbies. Maybe it was I don't know.
Still very impressive. That's really good stuff.
I had a taste for it at that point, and I think within the space of 2 months, I managed to pick up all the remaining DLC at the time.
Damn, it's so accessible because you can pick up the game, as you said, for free or for like discount price, and then not too long after you're already so invested. But for the most part, this is a game that you can keep playing forever and spend very little money on. So I would say hopefully it's been worth the investment.
I mean, I've picked up everything since. So
how many hours are you clocking at right now? Do you have an idea? If you play on PS4, it's difficult, I imagine.
1600 on PS5.
Well, that's pretty good for a game that you picked up for free, or
yeah, I was
for very little money.
It's funny because in terms of like live service games, I used to stick to the Call of Duties and the fighting games like Street Fighter and stuff like that. But even like I think Street Fighter 5, which was the last fighting game I put a lot of time into, that was only sat at 1,000 hours, and within a year I had done the same on Dead by Daylight, and I was like,
I do think this game is fairly unique. Because I'm pretty sure that in any other game, if you have 1,600 hours, which I think is what you said you have, you would be probably among the most experienced players out there. And in Dead by Daylight, I think it's maybe the only game I know, or one of the only games I know, where 1,000 hours means you're still pretty much a beginner, you're still completely free, green, you know? And with 1,000 hours, you're only starting to see everything for the first time.
Yeah, and I feel that as well. And I started watching your videos. I was watching JRM, Aaron, Spooky Loop, stuff like that, and I was trying to pick up tips on how to become a better killer. Because I at that point I only played killer. I didn't have a group of friends to play with. I do now.
That's great.
But yeah, at the time Pinhead had just come out, and I was like, oh, okay. I jumped on him straight away, and I think at the time he was quite strong when he first came out. It felt like he was anyway.
For sure. Definitely still is.
Yeah.
A bit clunky, some issues, but definitely a great character.
Yeah, I was getting. I think he was my first Prestige 3 character as well. I was like, and then picked up Nemesis, and I played quite a lot of Nemesis, and yeah, it just continued from there. I can't see myself getting bored anytime soon. I even got a tattoo.
The nice thing about that tattoo is that it doesn't even look like it belongs to a video game, honestly. If I saw you on the street and knew nothing about the game, it is a really cool branding. It looks really, really cool.
But people think it's crows.
Oh, really?
Sat on a bird wire. Yeah. I was like, look closer.
Beauty in the eye of the beholder and all that, I guess.
Yeah. But it's had quite the effect on me. And yeah, it's. I'm not going to get bored of it anytime soon. It's for me, it's not going anywhere. And in itself, I can't see it going anywhere.
I'll tell you this much. Even people that berate this game and cannot stop speaking ill about it and saying how terrible it is, even those people still play it all the time. So, yeah, you're definitely not alone. I think a lot of people feel that way. They cannot stop playing the game.
Yeah.
There's nothing quite like it. There's nothing quite like it.
No, and it's a subject we'll probably touch on in a bit, but that question comes up a lot between me and friends and other people. It's crazy. Speaking to friends and getting feedback, some of the viewers, a lot of them asked if I'll ever do a deep dive on Dead by Daylight, and given the nature of the game, I think it might be difficult, just because there's so many characters and years of development. It would make for a 10-hour video at least. Cool. But thankfully that's why we're doing this today. Wax Lyrical exists to fill those gaps for those kind of games, which is good. But yeah, with that in mind, let's move on to some of the main topics. The first one I wanted to talk about was the success of Dead by Daylight. Firstly, I pulled some stats from the interwebs because that's what I like to do. I love stats. I love numbers. According to one site, playcounter.com, Dead by Daylight has over 420 million in-game hours played, which is whether or not this is 100% correct, but that
must be so impossibly difficult to measure across all platforms. Let's keep in mind this game is on PC, at least 3 versions of it on PC. It's also on phone, which is its own project. It's on at least 5 consoles. It used to be on Stadia.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you numbers probably will sell it short. This game is absolutely huge.
Yeah, it's difficult to measure. Apparently 1.8 billion sacrifices made.
Yeah.
But then
it might be difficult to put those numbers into context, but I don't think it was that long ago when the developers themselves said something along the lines of 50 million people have played this game. Between the sales, between the free periods. That's crazy to think.
That's a lot
50
of people.
million people. That's more people that lived in the country I was born in, That's absolutely insane.
It's big numbers. It's generated an estimated gross of $241.6 million. That's and has sold approximately 18.7 million units since launch, which is not bad.
It's pretty fantastic.
I did a check on the latest Steam figures, which shows DBD to have an average of around 34,000 concurrent players on the Steam, and there was an article posted in 2020 on PC Gamer that stated across all platforms DBD had around 1 million players. Not sure if that still holds up true today.
Yeah, it's definitely gone up and down on Steam, but the fact that the player base is so solid throughout the years, even with these ups and downs, it's still quite something.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I guess my question regarding this is, why do you think it's been so successful when most other asymmetrical games seem to fall down? What makes it stand out amongst the rest?
Well, it really is unfair sometimes to compare this game to other asymmetricals because I guess we'll get to what makes DBD so big in a minute, but other asymmetrical games have been shackled by things that Dead by Daylight simply didn't have to deal with. Some of them, for example, had licenses that held back the type of content they could possibly have. So the worst example of this obviously would be Friday the 13th, a game that was beloved by a lot of people, but had its development completely halted by a lawsuit over what content could come to the game. That obviously was very regrettable. There's also other games that might not have these issues, but also might be limited in what they can do by just the sheer fact that they have to adhere to a license, right? You cannot have full creative freedom to work with characters or an IP that's not exactly your own. There's other asymmetrical games that didn't have these issues, such as VHS, which I thought was really, really fun as well. But they had other problems, like a faulty marketing strategy, some extremely unfortunate hacker attacks, and other things that hurt its development. And I guess at the end of the day, you need to realize that balancing an asymmetrical game is extremely difficult. Managing its player base is extremely difficult. With almost any other game, as long as you have people playing, you will fill a lobby. With VHS, we had the problem where one role was so fun to play that you had hundreds of people queued up for that role, and the other role, while not necessarily being weaker, it was much tougher. Nobody wanted to play it. So you might have the very unique problem of having a lot of players and no lobbies being filled. So finding that sweet spot of balance is very difficult. And Dead by Daylight, on the other hand, has done some things really, really well. The first thing that was huge for it, and I'm sure this is no surprise to most listeners that are familiar with the game, was the fact that very early on, they got in some massive licenses that got a lot of people that were outsiders to the genre or outsiders to the game or both into the game. And you yourself are an example. You were a big Silent Hill fan that saw the Silent Hill incredible chapter and decided to give this game a go. I know myself, if I was a Resident Evil fan, I would also probably have checked out the game, if only to play as Nemesis, because that's also really cool, right? So all of these licenses that they brought were amazing to broaden the appeal of this game and try to grab the attention of fan bases beyond its niche. And Dead by Daylight, at the end of the day, is a really fun game. I can never say that the game has been truly balanced. At any one point, one side has had some really obnoxious, broken thing, but the other side had them as well. And one thing that I don't think enough people give credit to the developers, even though they, again, haven't done the best job at making sure that both sides are perfectly balanced, they've always aimed for a statistical number where both sides are winning more or less half the time. And they achieve that pretty well at most levels. To the point where throughout most of Dead by Daylight's history, as far as the numbers that the developers shared with us, the killers were more or less winning 55-60% of the time. As opposed to 90% of the time where one side would obviously start a quit. So a fun gameplay loop, a array of interesting and appealing licenses to grab people's attention. The fact that the gameplay itself is very visceral and fun, and there is an element of RNG, of luck, where every map is a little bit different every time and everything plays out a bit different. Just the general loop that they came up with, I think it was just a stroke of luck or genius or both, because the original formula for the game has almost been unchanged. There's been some minor additions over the years, but the original formula worked so well that it's no wonder. And there's one thing perhaps that separates Dead by Daylight from the other games, especially the ones that didn't really take off, and that is how absolutely amazing this game is for content creation. I cannot stress that enough, and it's not just because I'm a content creator. This game is immediately compelling on both sides and allows for different types of people to enjoy the game. You can be a very relaxed player that sits on generators as a survivor and talks to your chat and chills and has the occasional fun chase, or you can be someone that talks through everything they do or play on the killer side and be constantly in action, and both of those things are fun to watch in different ways. Making videos about the upcoming patches, which are extremely consistent, is always fun. Covering the new content for new people is always a possibility. Content creation wise, this game is an absolute goldmine. The other games, for example, they had issues where one of the roles was really passive, or there was too much waiting time. For example, Evil Dead the game, which I personally, Evil Dead was a game that I personally thought was really, really fun, but it also had moments where you were just essentially farming and playing PvE, where the audience isn't really engaged. The thing that got me originally to play this game was watching someone else. I watched one of my streamer friends back in the day, and I thought to myself, I don't understand anything that's going on. All I know is that he's playing the bad guy and he's catching them, and that's fun. Without understanding it, it's fun. I am immediately hooked in the action, and that thing right there might just be the biggest thing that separated it from some of the other games. But maybe I am a bit biased, of course.
No, it's a real shame about Evil Dead. I invested quite heavily into. There was this like £200 collector's edition or something they released on the Boss website. Boss Logic? I can't remember. No, Boss Logic's a artist. Boss Games, I think it was, did this collector's edition. I was like really up for the idea, and then I started playing it. Found some difficulties with playing with randomers. I think it wasn't so forgiving because
there was something really unique about that game that I wish other games would have, that I wish Dead by Daylight would have, and it was the fact, and I don't know if you would agree with me, that the match was never over until the very end.
Yeah.
I had games where, they kicked my butt, but last second I managed to make a comeback.
Yeah.
And on the other side as well, like your teammates could die, but you could revive them, and in the end, one clutch play could win everything back. That game was really, really exciting. I really can't explain other than perhaps the empty time that you spend between fights and everything, and also the unintuitive nature of playing the demon. I think that was a big issue for new players. It really wasn't obvious what you had to do with demon, and you could argue, by the way, that this is also an issue of many of the other games. Dead by Daylight has this extremely straightforward approach to killer. As a killer, you even if you just go for what's moving in front of you, that's good enough. You don't need to use your brain too much. It's a great starting point. Survivors can delay you, but they cannot fight back. And some people have speculated that this is one of the things that makes killer a more welcoming experience in Dead by Daylight compared to some of the other games where the side with the survivors or the multiple parties can literally beat you up and make you completely useless when there's a big power imbalance, right? So the fact that they kept it so simple, the fact that playing killer, you said it yourself, you started playing killer, first match, managed to kill everyone. That, I think, is also something that other developers could learn from.
I remember Evil Dead suffered. There was one, if you picked like one of the Ashes, he was very overpowered and could pretty much solo the demon on his own.
Was it the one with that was gun oriented, I think?
Yeah, it was Evil Dead 2.
The 2, right? Yeah.
Evil Dead 2 Ash.
Yeah.
Evil
Ash. 1 was Evil 1 was the healing.
Yeah.
Evil, the one from the show was the leader. Yeah, and the second one was the one with the carbine rifle or whatever. Yeah, I remember that.
It also shame.
Yeah, I think also people felt like the game wasn't moving fast enough with updates. Is that something that you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I vaguely kept abreast of the conversations going on around it, and yeah, I think people were getting a little impatient because, unfortunately, we live in a time where people expect lots of content very quickly all the time, and it's really hard to
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
No, we are very much used. Even if something spent months in the oven cooking, if we get it in one day and we identify an issue in one day, we want to fix the next day. We are really, really spoiled in that regard for sure.
Yeah, no one realizes that devs are people, and they need time to.
What's that?
Yeah, sorry, what? They're human. Another one quickly, just touching on the same subject, like Texas Chainsaw.
Texas Chainsaw is honestly, I think, the standout among all the other asymmetrical games that have tried to measure up to Dead by Daylight. I think it's the only game that has surpassed Dead by Daylight in viewership on Twitch consistently for some time, which is incredibly difficult to do. And I mean incredibly difficult to do considering the sheer amount of Dead by Daylight players that stream, because it's such an accessible game, easy to stream. So that alone speaks volumes about the quality and the fun that it brought. But of course, after such a massive project was unveiled, now there's some breaks between new content and so on. And in that time, the game has obviously lost a little bit of its steam or its impact and its viewership. And obviously some people now are saying if it's not above Dead by Daylight, then it's out of the dead, which I think is really unfair.
Yeah, I think so. Because I'd like to see more games of that type continue. But like I said, it's hard to stack up sometimes, I think. Anyway, we'll move on to the next subject, which is should be an interesting one. Who are your favourite killers to play?
Well, I have a bit of an aversion for a killer that I think is already very popular, or a killer that I already feel is very easy and already figured out. Obviously, also as a player that invests a lot of time, I would also like to play a killer that allows me to show my skill, to express, that has a certain skill ceiling or skill expression to them. It's really not fun to play a killer that you feel like, okay, I'm already at this killer's limit. So I like the killers that are a little bit more strategic. I used to really enjoy Trapper and call myself a Trapper main. Back when placing traps in unexpected spots was really satisfying. I found that over the years, his gameplay has devolved and traps are harder to hide because the grass and other factors made it worse. So even though I still like Trapper, he's no longer my main. These days I don't main any one killer, I play them all a little bit. Killers that I still enjoy a lot. Strategic killers that reward thinking ahead, such as the Hag, the Plague, Dredge, even though he makes me suffer a lot because he's so difficult. And I also like Nemesis, but maybe for different reasons as well. Yeah, I would say those are my favorite killers at the time. I also like Artis as well.
Yeah, she's pretty good. I'm a big Resident Evil mark. Once again, another...
Oh, is that the Umbrella Crest?
That
nice.
Is, yeah. Big Resident Evil fan.
Nice tattoo.
So yeah, Nemesis, Wesker mainly, because Wesker is one of my favourite villains of all time, even though he's a bit... I think, even if he'd have been underpowered and weak, he probably would have been one of my favourites anyway, but yeah. I got lucky, I guess.
Nah, he's great in every way.
Yeah, it's I'm obviously I don't play on PC, so I haven't got the flick tech down, but still, I've had relative success.
Nah, he's good. He's fairly accessible. I think even for consoles, it's probably one of the reasons why he was so popular. And I think that will be one of the reasons why our new killer that's coming soon will also be popular. Because I also feel like that one will be both appealing, fun, because of the voice line, same as Wesker, and relatively playable on the same level on console, PC, and all the platforms. So it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I think killers are killers, right? And they're going to be, silent, menacing. But when they've got personality, I think that makes them a bit.
Yeah.
A bit more
and it doesn't need to be voice lines. There's also the community really freaks out about anything new. I remember when the Trickster came out and he looked behind himself in the lobby and to the camera and he winked, and everyone lost their mind because every chapter they seem to find one thing to do that's new. And they know it drives us crazy, and it's really fun to see unfold and see the reactions.
Yeah, it's great, and I think, like yourself, I do play a bit of everything. So I like the idea of knowing. I think knowledge is power, and I think if you can play everything, you know everything, and when it comes to being on the other side of that, you're up against. I guess in that sense, I should probably play a bit more Singularity, because I always struggle when I come against Singularity.
Oh, he's so difficult. He is so difficult. There are some killers that you can clearly tell that will, even if they are perfectly designed, and Singularity is a pretty good design, he will never be extremely popular just because it is so much micromanagement, And people, I feel, always tend to lean towards characters that are good, but not too difficult to pick up and not too difficult to play. That's maybe why a character like Hag, that is fairly strong, is widely unpopular and among the least played in the game, even though she's not terrible by any means. People like to do things right here, right now, and you can tell that in the popularity of the killers. But yeah, no, Singularity is really difficult.
I really like playing Hag. I think she's fun.
That's wonderful, but you're one of very few. Anytime people or the developers themselves try to compile some sort of statistics based on available data, they find that Hag, I think, is consistently the number 2 or number 3 least played killer. down there with Twins, for example, who is consistently the #1 least played character.
Damn.
And Twins is another character that is also quite complex because you need to manage 2 bodies at the same time. And obviously there's quite a few rough parts about their cooldowns and so on. So all of this complexity, people tend to stay away from.
Yeah, it's hard when you're preparing the mental stack for one thing in front of you, and then you have to all of a sudden manage 2 of those things. It can be a bit...
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that there are killers that are complex. I think if you have a game as wide as this one, with so many characters to choose from, it is okay to have that kind of variety. It would be a different story if this was another game where there were 3 characters and 2 of them were impossible to play. That would be a problem. But the fact that there's different characters that appeal to different playstyles, that's completely fine. You say you like Hag, I love her too, but some people cannot stand her, and that's fine, as long as there's not a fundamentally wrong part about their design, and that's unfortunately what happens with some of the other characters.
That's fair. Speaking of characters you can't stand, what about killers you don't like playing against?
You know, I actually like to play against almost any killer. I found that even the killers that I don't like to play as, because I think they're too strong, they are pretty bearable when you play against them because the counterplay is fairly unique. So I don't mind playing against nurses, which are some of the strongest characters. I don't mind playing against Blights, which is also one of the stronger characters. I really don't mind. The one time that I felt myself in my bones, okay, this is awful, I don't want to be here, is when a killer goes on a bit of a power trip and they take advantage of the fact that you're playing pretty chill, that you didn't maybe bring the best stuff you could have, and they went nuclear on you. So every now and then, especially back in the day, people could be, there was a time when this game didn't have anonymous mode, right? So people could see your name and you couldn't really hide it unless you wanted to change it. And there was also a time where you could switch killer in the lobby. You can no longer do that. So many times I was playing with my friends, chilling, someone would recognize my name, remember that I'm a streamer, and be like, I'm gonna give this guy the worst time of his life. And they would send me to a particular map with a particular killer, with a particular setup that is just so unfun to play against. So those people that try to take things to the extreme by choosing map, offering particular add-ons and build to make the experience really unfun for the other side, that's my least favorite type of killer to go against. Someone that doesn't want to lose under any condition and just brings the absolute most miserable thing to play against. It's more of a mindset thing rather than a specific killer, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess that's down to the player, I suppose, isn't it? Then at that point.
Yeah. I don't know. There's been a lot of lame trends over the years. Some people find it they find some pleasure in face camping others, like put them in a situation, for example, where they couldn't be rescued and just sit in there. You know, there's some people that I don't know, they get some sick satisfaction out of making the other side have less fun, not necessarily maximize their own fun. You know, sometimes you play with your own mindset and the other people get upset. That's not your fault, but like some people really go out of their way to be nasty, and that's always out there.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a moment.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I've always found Legion to be very unfun to play against.
Oh, I know someone that agrees with you. My partner feels exactly the same way. She cannot stand it.
Yeah, I just find it's a very boring play style. Because
it can be really awful. Yeah.
I think in terms of game speed, and you know, you don't want things to be dragged out too long, and a lot of the time. Yeah, Legion games just tend to go on for ages, and you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, and it gets quite... I almost just want to give up, because I'm just like, can I just move on to the next game now, please? And I don't like thinking like that, because I'm always up for a challenge. I'm always up for, you know, even when it's nurses and blights, right?
Yeah.
The 2 strongest killers in the game. I hate it when I see them, because I'm like, okay, this is probably going to end in... let's count 2 minutes, and they normally do, but I'll give her a good go. Especially if nurses these days, I've gotten used to. If I get to a building, I feel safer, because I think it's harder for them to, unless they're absolute god tier blinking through walls. It's
definitely not fun when you play against someone that is playing something strong, and they're playing it to such a degree that you know that it's almost a single player game. No matter what you do, it's gonna end up the same. Yeah, that's very frustrating. Yeah. Lucky for you, if you hate Legion, you can bring some builds that are very naturally good against Legion and are not bad against anyone else. I think the problem for some people is that they don't just hate one killer, they hate literally half the cast. They cannot stand Legions, but they also don't want to play against Pinhead. They don't want to play against Pinhead, but they also don't want to see a Doctor. They don't want to see a Doctor, but oh my god, if it's a raid, they're going to DC. Like, there are some people like that are... I don't know how they still play the game, but they are chronically upset at anything. And I think at that point, those people need to take a break. And on the killer side, that's also very prevalent. They hate flashlights because they're OP, but medkits are also really strong, and toolboxes are awful, and map offerings are terrible, but random maps are also horrible. Like, they will complain about everything, every little thing. And I'm definitely guilty of doing that sometimes. And if you find yourself in that mindset where everything bothers you, you need to take a step back and probably, play the other side a little bit, take a little break, come back when the game excites you a bit more, and you'll probably be happier for it, and you'll be a better teammate, and you'll be a better sport.
Yeah, and I think that kind of bleeds a little bit into the next topic, and that's sort of with play styles, because you find that when you come up against a Bubba, for instance, and they want to do face camping because face camping Bubba's a thing. Back in the day, the idea was if that happens, everyone just sit on gens. The other person gives you as much time as possible, and then you normally get out with them getting one kill, and it's like, okay,
yeah, it's a very sick situation where no one realistically is having fun. The person on the hook isn't doing anything, the person camping the hook isn't doing anything, and the other people are holding one button and pressing space bar occasionally. It's not really fun, but some people, as I said, they will go out of their way just for some, because they think making the other people they think they're ruining the other people's fun, and that somehow is satisfying to them. Yeah. It's also really obvious sometimes that people fish for a reaction, and not just from streamers but from other players as well, and it's quite sad.
Yeah, it's in recent memory the Skull Merchant was one that before she pre-nerf Skull Merchant. The whole 3-gen games lasting.
The very sad part about that is that it was an absolutely legitimate way to play that the game absolutely allowed. So that wasn't an exploit. That wasn't like playing in a way that just stalls the game forever. That's just a very poor series of decisions made over time that allowed that, and a very strange design for this killer. So yeah, that was a point of contention. But if we're talking about toxicity and toxic playstyles in general, I would make a big distinction between anything that happens in-game and anything that happens outside the rules of the game or in the post-game chat. Because I do see a lot of concern in the community, especially among new players, that think that if they play the game a certain way, they're going to be judged, or they're going to be called out, or they're going to get banned or anything like that, which for the most part is completely fine. You play the game however you want, as long as you're not breaking the terms of service or cheating or exploiting, that's completely fine, right? So even though some playstyles we might find annoying or really, really boring, at the end of the day, it's the developer's job to try to discourage that, like they did with camping, which you mentioned. Now it's obviously very different, right? However, some people take it past this. They don't just do something maybe annoying in game, they'll go outside the game. They will type some horrendous, terrible stuff in the post-game chat. They will find out where this person streams or their socials and harass them, send them death threats, the ABCD of online bullying and harassment. And that, I think, is a different type of toxicity. Some people conflate these two things together. I think that's completely different,
Yeah.
And obviously the later part deserves a lot more condemn, and we should all be one for that, I think.
Absolutely. Like I said, I always see it in the community, there's an argument of how people think you should play the game, and maybe a sense of entitlement on both ends. The worst offenders from Survivor's perspective, like we said, camping, tunneling, is considered toxic behaviour, and then on the Survivor side, people complain about gen rushing, teabagging, and general griefing. It's funny because I've seen you talk about this before, about sometimes tunneling could be necessary, and it's not necessarily. I don't think it's toxic, personally. I don't think it's nice because obviously the person playing the game doesn't get to really play much if they're
It's really funny though, because depending on the person that you ask, certain playstyles are completely fine.
Yeah.
If you chase a survivor, that there are some survivors out there that will literally refuse to do their main objective, which is to work on the generator side, in order to be chased, because that's where they get their fun. If you chase them and only them, you are giving them everything they want. And they want to be chased. And if you tunnel them, they will hold you. By tunneling, for anyone that's not familiar, it means like tunnel vision, just focus on chasing them. They'll be as happy as it gets. But then maybe a newer player that less experienced, that goes down quickly, you know, as you said, they're out of the game immediately. It's not fun for them. Unfortunately, there is a huge divide. There's like a huge barrier that starts already in the lobby. Sides cannot talk to each other. You don't know exactly who you're playing with most of the time. You don't know if they're experienced. You don't know if they're going to put up a good fight. You don't know if the killer's trying to play for fun, if the killer's just trying to ruin your day by any means, if he's just trying his best to win but doesn't know how to do it. There's this barrier. Ultimately, there's this opaque wall between both sides that only gets lifted at the end of the match, and that's the moment where everyone assumes the worst of the other side. You know, they assume that, oh, that guy played like that because he hates me. And survivors brought that not because they want to or because it's a challenge or they have some achievement. No, it's because they want to make me suffer. And some people don't handle this very well. They don't assume the best of others. They just immediately jump at each other's throats. And yeah, it's happened millions of times and will happen millions of times again.
Yeah, it's certainly an attitude that I wish was shaken off a bit more.
What do you suggest? Do you have any ideas?
I mean, it's hard. Like, aside from opening up comms in the main lobby, because the funny thing is, if you sat people in a room with each other,
it would be very cordial, right?
It would be so different.
It would be very different, yeah.
Yeah. So having that barrier gives almost people a license to be a dick sometimes.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely on point. People feel like it's a very anonymous thing, and I've seen when people think that no one is watching and they're not going to be held accountable to their peers or their friends or the overall community, they will do some and say some really ugly things.
I'll give you one example. Recently, I'm not going to name names because I think that's unfair. But people like to put their streamer titles in their username sometimes. Yeah. Advertise
TTB / my name.
Yeah, almost like a, you know, you've played with me. Come and check out the stream afterwards, kind of thing, which is absolutely fair.
Fine. Yeah.
I was playing with my friends. I can't remember what the killer was, but it was actually quite a fair game. We got all the gens done, and they were trying to open the door. And they downed them, and then they just stood there watching them for, like, I don't know, the rest of the
4 minutes until the 4-minute bleed out.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
What?
And I could see this person was a streamer, so, you know, I went into their
stream.
Naturally,
you're curious, you go check out their point of view.
And I said, what are you doing? Like, why are you... What is the reason for... I said, what is the reason for this toxic behaviour? And he went, oh, well, other people do it, so I can do it. And that was their response. And I kind of just went...
Oh,
right.
Damn. That is a very low standard to hold yourself to, I think.
And it's hard sometimes because when you go into a chat and there's a lot of people watching.
Oh yeah, no, you're demonized immediately.
Yeah, you can't say anything.
No. And again, it comes down to this barrier, right? Like I notice it in my own streams. I notice it in other people's streams. Like, obviously, the people that hang out in a chat, part of our community, are always assuming the best of their content creator, right? They probably like them. They probably have their narrative as well. Let's imagine that match, for example, was really frustrating for that killer. So everyone's on the same boat and like, screw these guys. They just wanted us to suffer. Yeah, they deserve this. I would beat them out on the ground too, waste their time. And then you come in and you might have the very legitimate question of like, hey, did we do something wrong? And then suddenly they dump it on you. It's very difficult. I would argue, or I would recommend that if you play with a streamer, not to you, but anyone listening, if you play with a streamer, don't expect this both sides to immediately understand each other and go with a little bit of good faith, you know? You'll find that many people that would otherwise be defensive and immediately defend themselves and react poorly might be more willing to understand your point of view if you are a bit humble, if you extend an olive branch or whatever. I think that would help. But yeah, sadly, that story you told me, I've heard so many times of streamers being bad sports, assuming the worst, calling you a stream sniper because you found them, even though, you could see them from a mile away. Like, I've heard so many stories, and I'm not innocent of that myself. I'm also being very guilty of assuming the worst from other people. I remember
it's human. It's a human thing.
It's really it really is. You can, from your point of view, I've played games where I think these people are demons. They're trying to really make this the most unfun thing it can be, and then it turns out they were just all drunk friends doing their, Yeah. I remember I had a viewer come in, sorry Otzdarva for not doing the gens. I'm just very drunk. I was the Quentin in your match. Sometimes you have to kind of understand that there's someone at the other side of the screen that you don't really know what they're going through. And yeah, it's a good reminder not to be too rough on them for your own sake.
No, but that's the thing, and what you just said is absolutely true. You never know what someone's going through, and people that know me know that I sometimes suffer with my mental health, and I was sat there thinking, thank God I wasn't having a bad day, or I could have taken that really badly. I might have played the game and gone, I don't want to play that now. I'm kind of sad.
And let's not forget that this is a game where you can generally feel like, because of its nature, you can feel like everyone's against you. You play as the killer, and you have 4 people that can gaslight you at the end of the game into all kinds of messed up ideas. Or you can play and then feel like your teammates do not care about you or actively hate you, and then on top of that, the killer also has no words of sympathy. You can feel very isolating, despite the nature of the game. So be sure to talk to friends. Be sure to take your breaks and not let ugly people on the internet dictate how you feel. And if at any point this game bothers you, which it will, because it's like relationships. You cannot have the good stuff without risking being vulnerable and without risking some of the bad stuff, right? You go through a tough breakup and you don't give up on it because you'll have a good relationship someday, right? So with this game, it's the same. You have some tense games and you have some good moments, but it also comes with moments of deep frustration. For any one time you kick ass, there will be one time someone kicks your butt, and you need to be a good sport about it.
Yeah. As to how we solve the issue, I don't have a good answer, unfortunately.
No, me neither. I do think some kind of in-game form to encourage good sportsmanship would go a long way.
Yeah.
I know other games have done that. I'm sure you're familiar, and the audience is familiar with other games that reward you in small but not insignificant ways for your good teamwork, for not giving out on other people, for being a good opponent. That kind of stuff, I think, would help. I think it might be... We know that there's some people out there that are just shining beacons of positivity. You can never sway them. And some people out there that are just dumpsters of hatred. You're never going to change them. But for the overall majority, sometimes a little bit of encouragement is what might sway them into being a little bit nicer and making the experience better for everyone else.
Like I said, we're all humans and we all play games for escapism, so it's we want that experience to be as positive as possible, even in a game where we're trying to kill each other or whatever. But
between the stabs, some hugs.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next topic. Sort of looking towards the future, things you'd like to see added, changed. What's going to keep the train rolling? Do you think? Like you said earlier, it's not really balanced per se, but
the game does get better. The thing that really changes is our expectations. As the game gets better and better, we expect it to even be more and more perfect, right? This game has been extremely consistent for at least 6 or 7 years now. It's been ridiculous. Every 3 months, there's one new killer with maybe one new survivor on average, sometimes a new map, and everything that comes with all of that, which is a lot. They've been this consistent for so long. And I think, obviously, I can't speak about their inner working and their inner strategy. I know nothing about that. But my understanding is that it's worked so well for them. And as we pointed out, Dead by Daylight is so unique in its massive success that I don't think they're going to change this formula anytime soon. Anytime you ask them or they talk about Q&As about their strategy, they seem to be following the same formula of new content every 3 months. Now, personally, I find this a little bit disappointing because I look back at the content that we have and I look forward to the content that we'll get. And I noticed that the content that we have is not getting enough love. There could be better tweaks, better changes. For example, you said you play Nemesis, name me 3 good add-ons. I'll wait here forever, you know? Like, there's so many, or Pyramid Head, name me 3 good add-ons that are not range. I'll wait here forever. There are some massive issues that the game lags behind and doesn't have enough time to correct and address appropriately because they are so focused on the new content. And we have a lot of examples of how the developer team is so busy with new content that they can barely keep up with touching the previous one, right? So I am a little bit worried about that. I do think at one point the baggage that we're carrying behind us is going to get too big and there will be too many issues to the point where maybe they'll need to take a little break and change the formula. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, sadly. I think they will continue to go at the same pace until the train begins to derail a little bit, which could be years from now.
I was going to say, like, how long has it got left? That's the other big question, isn't it? Like,
I mean, again, I'm not an industry expert. I can't, like, it's so hard to compare this game to anything because there are games that have been out for 15 years with just new content every X or Y time, and it worked out great for them. They're now bigger than they've ever been. I'm sure we can all think of some examples. And there's also games that just fizzled into irrelevancy all of a sudden, or maybe the studio had some issue and it was discontinued. But yeah, so it's really hard to predict. My prediction is that we're gonna get the same pace of content. We're gonna have our minds blown time and time again by new license and original characters until one day a release doesn't quite go as smoothly as they'd like. They realize that they have a lot behind them that they need to touch up, and then maybe they'll take a little break and spend some time polishing existing content before moving on to making one again. To be fair, there is a precedent to that in the Dead by Daylight mobile release. With the Dead by Daylight mobile release, they had also a schedule that they were going to stick to of releasing new content that obviously mirrors the main core game. And then at one point they were like, okay guys, we can't do it. We promised this, but it's a little bit too much. We're not putting out content at the quality we'd like, so we're going to take a little break. It's going to take us a little bit longer. And that probably was the right step. So I'm thinking this game will do the same eventually, but that eventually could be a year, 2 years, 5 years, God knows. So I'm very much clueless about this.
No, that's fair. Imagine if they ever tried to do a reset, like Dead by Daylight 2 or something, you know? Like...
Yeah, no, that would be... some people welcome that idea because they see some of the issues that are very prevalent in the code and the overall skeleton of the game. They see some of the issues there and they think if we started from scratch again, yes, it would be a big reset, but it would be able to fix this. I think like an Overwatch 2 kind of thing, right? I see that as something that could absolutely happen.
Yeah, and Overwatch did that fairly well, I should imagine. I think. I mean, not.
I think the main issue with Overwatch is that it promised something that it didn't ultimately deliver, which was the PvE.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, if you want to draw, if we want to get the conspiracy hat on, you could argue that the developers could be like, hey, we're gonna make Dead by Daylight 2 and it's gonna be so much better because it's gonna have a single player campaign and it's gonna fix all the recurrent bugs and all of the issues that we couldn't do before, like replays. Now you're gonna be able to have replays, and then when they launch it, it's all a mistake and none of it comes, and they cancel one thing, postpone another one indefinitely, and then the other thing they do it, but they do it bad. So it could be a problem. I think some people resent the Overwatch 2 transition because it didn't deliver fully on its promise. Yeah. And maybe Dead by Daylight has looked at that and been like, nah, we're not doing that. it's so nice to have one game where you have 50 killers from across 100 years of media, you know, or 50 years of horror media. So that's what you're gonna get in Dead by Daylight, and we're not changing it. Which, to be fair, I mean, it's working out for them, so you can't really blame them.
No, and that's absolutely fair. One thing that I thought would have been cool, but now probably impossible to implement, was much like the killers have got their own individual powers. I have the same thing for survivors.
You know, I can't believe we didn't talk about this, but that is also a completely unique thing about Dead by Daylight that I don't think is present in any of the other asymmetrical video games. In all of them, VHS, Evil Dead, also Texas Chainsaw. In all of them, the survivor side, the multiple player side, the victims, whatever they're called, they all have unique individual abilities. And in all of them, I also think you are restricted to how many you have in your team. So you couldn't have, for example, 2 Ashes from the Evil Dead 2 on the same lobby, right?
Which cause problems in itself, because the amount of times you'd be in a lobby and someone's in there and they pick your character and they just leave, and it's like...
Yes, and that is one of the dumbest things that Dead by Daylight did, which you could think is like lazy. They didn't bother giving everyone a power, but it's also one of the most genius, because it means that if you pick a character and someone else wants to pick it too, you don't have a problem.
Yeah.
The Texas Chainsaw game is releasing in 5 days a new character on each side. So a new murderer on the family side and a new victim, right? A new character on the victim side. And it's going to be a massive problem. Everyone's going to buy it. They're going to load into a lobby. Someone already has picked it. And now the character that you paid $10 to unlock, $10 to unlock, is unplayable and you need to dodge lobbies. That is a problem. How are they going to get around this problem? I do not know. So I do believe that I don't know if with good judgment or by me or by sheer luck, the developers of Dead by Daylight not giving survivors unique abilities was the smartest thing they ever did.
Yeah, that's quite funny to think about, and like it worries me, like I said, for the future of Texas Chainsaw, if that's gonna continue to be a thing, unless they change it where multiple people can play the same.
Yeah,
family
that might be one of the problems with licenses. Maybe the license holder never agreed to have 3 of the same character in one spot. Maybe they think that ruins the license. Maybe they don't have the freedom to do that. What they might try to do to alleviate the situation is incentivize you to play the other characters as well, obviously. But it's gonna be difficult because if you're a new player, you want to maybe you don't mind, but if you already have everything unlocked on all the characters and now there's a new one, that's where they need to release lots of new characters, and I mean lots of new characters at once, or else this is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I think that would go some ways to at least alleviate the issue somewhat, just because people haven't got to fight over the scraps you know, that they don't want. But like, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I in my head when I thought about it, I thought that would be a good idea for DBD, but then now I suppose it depends. If it was a case where you could have 4 Michaelas and she's got her own healing power, then there wouldn't be an issue. But because you could say now, but they couldn't do that because of balancing issues. But 4 survivors can just take the same 4 perks anyway. So
yeah, no, that some people consider that a problem. I don't know if you're aware, but some people consider that a big issue. In competitive Dead by Daylight, it is now the golden standard to never allow multiple of the same perk. They found out that by doing this, it increases the creative component of the team. They are forced to now run. There's 4 survivors, 4 perks each, 16 unique perks, and it's great. It actually leads to some really creative combos, and it makes the game better. But that's 4 people in a competitive environment that are working together as a team with one goal and one mindset. When you go into a public match where people just want to run their own favorite perks, they don't care what other people want. They want to run their own perk. So it's different, obviously. And yeah, now you have that problem. Very, very complex and fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I think I heard you talk about it once about just distortion, for instance, because I always take distortion. That's like my favorite perk.
It's a cute perk, yeah.
It's just I like having the knowledge and knowing. So
right, yeah. So distortion is a perk for our listeners. that essentially gives you a layer of protection. Anytime a killer, the big guy, would see you, they don't see you, and you lose one of your charges to a limited amount. And then you can use that to reverse engineer the information that the killer has. So you can figure out, oh, the killer was going to see me now. That means they have this perk. So it's a really comfy perk.
It's saved me so many times. Like I'm sort of crouching next to a gen and they kick it. I'm like, oh, thank God they're walking away. But like you said, in a tournament situation, you only need one person to have that, so they can go right.
Yeah, they can call out the information, of course. Yeah. But that would be its own topic. The difference between high level Dead by Daylight, where everyone is in comms, like everyone knows what's coming, and the average public match, there is a huge chasm of difference. Not just in the hours or the experience of the players, but also like what they try to get out of a match.
Yeah. I think one more thing. I mean, aside from like new killers coming to, I mean, I've got a list of killers I'd love to see in the game. You ever played The Evil Within?
Yeah, the Evil Within. Yeah, of course.
Give me box
Oh,
head.
you'd like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's very iconic. I do agree. He would look very good in the game. The one with the safe head, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that killer, that would be a really good killer. I agree.
I can imagine some sort of weird safe head teleport.
Yeah.
Thing going on.
Yeah,
there.
no, it does lend itself very well for this game. I agree.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about the Terminator, like Jason, now that he's free of his, and someone was saying that Skull Merchant was meant to be the Predator.
That has been so long debunked, and it's so far detached from how the developers make this game. Like, it is completely possible that they could come up with an idea and pitch it to a licensor, and the licensor could say no, never, and then they could recycle some of that. That's completely possible. But they also said in several interviews, not just one time, that when they have an idea for a particular killer and they pitch it, they don't throw it away or they don't recycle. They keep it just in case that licensor changes their mind. It's really, really possible that some of the licenses we have today were initially not accepted or rejected. So I think the developers are quite smart in that regard, and they take so long to develop some of these killers that it's almost a bit silly to think that they just do this change last second, or they just swap this last second. The work that goes behind each of these chapters is so ridiculously ahead of time. In fact, like, one of the things that you realize when you talk to the developers one-on-one a little bit and try to give them feedback is that the things that they're working on the game right now, we're going to see in 5 or 6 months, if not longer. Whenever the devs have told us, oh yeah, this feature's pretty much ready here, 6 months from now or 1 year from now. Just crazy. It's crazy just how far ahead this game is already thought out. While we talk, it's very possible that they're already closing in a license that we'll see in a year and a half. Just, like, to me, that plays the game now is insane to think that far ahead. We have no idea what the game will look like then.
That's what I mean. But it's like, so it's constantly evolving, and they need to be like 4 steps ahead, right?
Yeah.
So, who would you like to see come to the game next?
Okay.
If you had to pick.
Oh, right. Well, I don't typically like to discuss the upcoming one because I feel like it ruins the surprise. But now that we've seen the next big one and there's nothing on the horizon, I wouldn't mind the Terminator that you mentioned. Yeah. I feel like that would be a good one. It would have some good lines. It could have some really interesting UI elements. The music would be cool. It doesn't even need to have a survivor. Just give us a half-robot naked Arnold.
I'll say, are we going Arnold Schwarzenegger or T-1000?
I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Now that they are so good at pumping out designs and I was gonna say thumbnails and skins for each of the characters, the thing is, they would do all of them. They would do all of them. So they would give you, the default would be an Arnold, right? And then they would tell you one where he's kind of weathered down and you can see the metallic endoskeleton of the, and then there would be one that's just the the metallic robot itself, and then there will be another one which is like rusty, and then another one, each of them $10, and you're gonna pay up because they're all so cool, right? And each of them has a different light or some other cool gimmick to them, and yeah, honestly, I think that's how they make the money.
Well, they got my money, so
they got mine. Full disclosure, I am partnered with them, and I don't think I've spent. For my own account, I don't think I've spent $1 in this game for several years because they are very gracefully providing me with.
Which is entirely fair.
I mean, sure, but I think it's still worth disclosure. I was just gonna say, oh, they got my money too. But if I wasn't partnered, I would buy everything.
Yeah.
Because despite our minor gripes with this game, the company working behind it is a good company that treats its employees well, consistently ranked as one of the better places to work in Canada. So I will never feel bad supporting this game financially, knowing that it's going to a good place and to good people, and obviously, paying for a hobby, paying for a game that I've played for like thousands of hours. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, well, that brings me to my final talking point for you.
I haven't used any of my lifelines yet.
No?
No.
All right.
Can I call a friend for this one?
Possibly.
Okay.
No, this is a really simple one. It's just, what does Dead by Daylight mean to you?
Well, there are some people that play. This is a horror-themed game, right? And it's a horror-themed game that, despite its horror appearance, at the end of the day, is a chase. A chase ring around the rosy chase game, right? Some people play it for the gameplay, which can be very, very fun. Watch some high-level gameplay, you'll see exactly what I mean. Some people play it because they're attracted to some of the horror icons. For me, I don't think it's either of these things exactly. Dead by Daylight to me is like a bar, right? I go there and I hang out with my friends, and it doesn't matter if the bar is, I don't know, a tea shop or a coffee shop. It doesn't matter exactly what they serve, but rather the company that I have once I'm there. That's what makes it good, right? So the most important thing that Dead by Daylight has done for me is help me build a community that is absolutely incredible and connect with other communities that are absolutely incredible, and then go to a convention and shake hands and hug people that are amazing and that make my life better. So having a hub, like a bar where we all hang out, that's the most important thing this game has done for me and what is most meaningful. On a simpler level, I'm also an absolute sucker for trying to understand things and categorize them and explain them. I love doing that. I would do that about rocks if I was into rocks. I'm not, right? So being able to open the game and seeing 600 add-ons, 34 killers, and being able to theory craft and come up with creative ways to use all these things differently, to entertain people, to educate them in the game, make them, all of that is so satisfying as a content creator as well. So yeah, that would also be a big part of what Dead by Daylight means to you. Just, again, a bottomless pit of fun that doesn't quite fill up just yet.
I feel you on that one. Like I said earlier, it came to me when I needed it the most, providing me with a lift. And like I said, despite its flaws, I'll forever be grateful for its existence and the time I've spent with it. So, Dead by Daylight, here's to you.
Yeah. And anyone that hasn't tried it, I'm sure they're having some sale going on. Every now and then they have free weekends as well if you don't want to make the investment. And just try it out. I'm sure you'll like it. This game has attracted and appealed to people from very different walks of life. So it might be for you if you've never tried it yet.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Otz, for coming on here and talking to me about Dead by Daylight.
It's been an absolute pleasure. What a pleasant conversation. One of the most, calming, cozy times I've had it recently.
Thank you so much. If you'd be so kind as to plug yourself silly, just list anywhere people can find you.
Well, I devote most of my time, almost 50-50, to making videos and streaming on Twitch. If you look up Otz, O-T-Z, I'm sure that will be enough to have some of my socials pop up. And maybe if you find one, you'll find the rest. And I play mostly Dead by Daylight, but I also cover other games that pique my interest from time to time. So if you stop by my videos or my community, you will be welcome with open arms.
He does Soul stuff as well, which is also another one of my favourites out there.
Oh, that's lovely. Didn't know we had that in common.
Yes. But yeah, Please check him out, follow him on all those platforms if you don't already. He puts out some fantastic content. As per usual, I'd like to give a massive shout out to my Patreons for your support. You're all absolutely amazing. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If you like what you've watched today, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and also like this video. And as I mentioned previously, I will be taking a slight break in December to recharge my batteries, but I will be returning in the new year with another deep dive and other long form content. As mentioned before, this is a new series for the channel, and I'd like to do more, so please let me know in the comments what you think and if you'd like to see more. Finally, please follow me on Twitter at DomPedroX for regular updates on upcoming videos, and if you like what I do and fancy supporting me, as mentioned, I have a Patreon as well. I'd like to do these videos more often, so any support you can give would be amazing. Right, see you next time.